I may have a problem. Welcome to all the books I purchased in July. Hi, I'm Amber, and I make content about poetry and writing and just existential dread. I write poetry, I read books. I, like a lot of people, was an avid reader in childhood, and then, well, the crushing claws of life got to them, and then they found reading again, and now they're happy, but also sad because my money is going somewhere else. So today we have a lot of used books. There's also some pretentious books in here, but they're good, okay? We've got some classics in here. I'm really, really excited to share these with you guys. I am not like a lot of book people online. I've never made content in this thing before just because I've had lots of opinions about it, but I'm not the type of person to read a book a day. Maybe if I had the time and it was my only job, I would, but I don't. This is a hobby for me, okay? So the first book I'm going to be talking about is one I'm actually currently reading. It's Anna Karenina. The first book is one I'm actually currently reading. It's Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. There's a great bookstore here in Victoria that sells a ton of used and new books, but what I like is they keep, they don't have different sections. They're not like, oh, here's the used fiction, and then here's the, new stuff. Everything is mixed in. It's just a bookstore. So, this is next to, a brand new printed copy of Anna Karenina. So, I've never read this, and anytime I mention this book, or I'm seen reading this book, or I would mention it to someone else, they'd be like, oh, that is so depressing. So I'm very excited to read this. Magnificent drama of vengeance, infidelity, and retribution. Anna Karenina portrays the moving story of people whose emotions conflict with the dominant social mores of their time. Sensual, rebellious Anna falls deeply and passionately in love with the handsome Count Vronsky. When she refuses to conduct the discreet affair that her cold, ambitious husband and Russian high society would condone, she's doomed. Set against the tragic love of Anna and Vronsky, the plight of the melancholy nobleman Konstantin Levin unfolds. In doubt about the meaning of life, haunted by thoughts of suicide, Levin's struggles echo Tolstoy's own spiritual crisis. But Anna's inner turmoil mirrors the emotional imprisonment and mental disintegration of a woman who dares to transgress the structures of a patriarchal world. In Anna Karenina, Leo Tolstoy brought to perfection the novel of social realism and created a masterpiece that bared the Russian soul. Next, I have Stephen King's The Institute. I got this on sale too because it's a little bit damaged. In the middle of the night, intruders silently murder young Luke Ellis's parents and steal him away from his suburban Minneapolis home, an operation that takes less than 2 minutes. Luke will wake up in a faraway room that looks just like his own, except there's no window, and outside his door are several other doors, behind which are several other kids with very special abilities, who arrived at wherever here is in the same way Luke did. They're all confined to the area known as front half, which is a good thing. No one ever returns from back half. Nevertheless, the incarcerated children are intended to serve, given that the staff is ruthlessly dedicated to extracting the force of their extra-normal gifts. Cooperation is rewarded and resistance is punished brutally. As each new victim disappears to back half, Luke becomes increasingly desperate to somehow find a way out and get help, even though no one has ever escaped from the living hell known as the Institute. I read one of Stephen King's books. I read Carrie, actually, not too long ago, because I am interested in kind of getting more to the horror genre, and I know, King is kind of when people think of horror literature or horror books, they think Stephen King. And so I read Carrie just because I wanted to know okay, what made this kind of terrifying for its time, and it was really eye-opening actually. I really liked it. So I wanted to read The Institute because I saw it was on sale and I can't stop myself. Then I got in that other beautiful bookstore that I found, Edgar Allan Poe, The Fall of the House of Usher, and other stories. So there's other short stories of his and his only novel that he ever wrote. And I wasn't able to read The Fall of the House of Usher when I was taking my Gothic literature class, so I'm really happy that I picked this up. Plus it's got The Telltale Heart, The Black Cat, tons and tons of good stuff in here. This is a controversial one. Some people will have opinions, but here's this. Wait, because the last book has something to do with this book. I got Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. One, because you can find this everywhere. Two, a book that I will talk about in my haul. I've always wanted to read this. For reasons of my own past, I really wanted to read this. I've read just a few pages just to kind of see what I was getting myself into, and Nabokov is a beautiful writer. The prose is stunning, and I'm reading it and I'm like, the subject matter is terrible. And I mean, the whole point is like, this guy is justifying these terrible acts the whole book, and it's basically just like the mind of someone who's completely, you know, it's lunacy, right? Like he's not well, but he thinks this is normal, it's fine, he's justifying it. It's like justifying his madness, right? And that's what the whole book is. But the prose is beautiful. I can't wait to read more things by Nabokov. I want to read Pale Fire really bad. I'm already really impressed with the language in here, so I'm really excited to read this. But I really think that this will be something good to read after I've already read the book that I will talk about later. Now, this book is really great. I read it for my Gothic literature class in college, but the cover is atrocious. If you've already seen the short, or if you've seen the reel or TikTok, you'll see it. It's this copy of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Now, here's the thing. It's the monster riding a motorcycle, which is hilarious. But honestly, what I find, like, this kid was born on the wrong side of the lamb. And then the back said, he's big, he's bad, he's ugly, and he really wants a wife. Which, like, if we're being fair, that is true. That happens, right? He wants a companion. But there's so much more to this book than that, which is frustrating. Yeah, Mary Shelley's great. I love hearing stories. Like, when we were talking about Mary Shelley, we talked about Lord Byron, we talked about Polidori, like, when they had their little, like, vacation moment, and how this story came about. So cool. Shelley is a fascinating writer, just her history, and she had very progressive parents. Like, she's really, really cool. The only thing they weren't cool with was her going steady with a married man, which I think most parents would be not okay with. I say most. You never know. And then I also got The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I have also never read this. I feel like I'm exposing myself here, but you know what? That's fine. I feel like a lot of people who are getting into reading, there are a lot of classics that maybe a lot of people haven't read, or books that a lot of people have read that they haven't. The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, I also read this this month, which is great. So, aspiring poet Esther Greenwood has everything going for her apart from a dark cloud of mental illness which hangs over her. She gains a dream internship at a major New York magazine in the 1950s, but her struggle with depression ricochets her back to Massachusetts. Sent to a psychiatrist by her mother, Esther finds herself in an irreversible path to hospitalization. Part autobiographical, The Bell Jar is a defiant, coming-of-age story told in sharp prose and shot through with black humor. Far from depressing, Path's eagle-eyed description of Esther's search for identity is triumphant and gutsy. Primarily a poet, Plath's economy of style is evidence in this, her only novel. I have read a few poems by Sylvia Plath. This is beautiful. This is very... It really reminded me of Girl Interrupted, the movie. I've not read the book and I really want to read it, but this really had that vibe of just like, beautiful, promising woman needs to be hospitalized because she's just not doing too great. Also, kind of in that, with the similar style, there were these books that were like $3 for $10, and you'll see because they have a similar style. This is The Yellow Wallpaper and Other Stories by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Again, I read The Yellow Wallpaper in high school, and it's really good. Again, there's so many stories in here, but The Yellow Wallpaper, a young woman is confined to her room by her husband for the sake of her health, with nothing to distract her apart from the patterns of the wallpaper itself. She slowly spirals into insanity. I feel like a lot of us can relate to this idea of being stuck in one place, that it starts to make you feel trapped and paranoid, and you start to this slow descent into madness. I like books with that theme, honestly. Maybe that's weird of me. But then I've got Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. I love a good gothic novel. I love a gothic novel. Gothic literature is my favorite genre, I would have to say. I love gothic literature, and then I love sad girl literature. I don't know. I love things about depressing women who are ambitious and beautiful and their life actually sucks. And I love gothic literature. So, I've not read anything by Riley Sager before, but even the cover just, I loved it. So, 25 years ago, Maggie Holt and her parents moved into a rambling Victorian estate called Bainbury Hall. They spent 3 weeks there before fleeing in the dead of night, an ordeal her father recounted in a spooky memoir that became a worldwide phenomenon. She may have been too young to really remember what happened, but Maggie doesn't believe a word of her father's books. Ghosts, after all, don't exist. But now Maggie's back at Bainbury Hall and is beginning to believe that there might have been some truth in the fiction. That either way, someone or something doesn't want her here, and that she might be in danger all over again. It sounds so good. I love a good haunting in a Victorian manner. So good. We've got some Jane Eyre. Now, a part of this book haul and Why It's So Large is I left so many of my books back in New York City when I was fleeing. And so a lot of that included classics like Jane Eyre, which I never got to read, but I left it because I was like, you know what, I haven't read it and I'm not carrying it with me, because again, I was packing everything up into an SUV and driving across the country. So, but Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, I'm very excited to read this. The story's heroine, Jane, is a plain-speaking orphan whose determination, good nature, and spirit see her through a series of personal ordeals from an early age. When she takes up a position as governess at Thornfield Hall to teach 8-year-old Adele, she is resigned to an uneventful career. But then, the moody, charismatic owner of Thornfield, Edward Rochester, makes a rare visit to the hall, and Jane's impassioned self-respect and moral conviction are tested to the breaking point. So I'm very excited to read this. And again, like, look at that cover with just, like, the house. Okay. I'm so excited about this. Magic Lessons by Alice Hoffman. So, Practical Magic is one of my favorite movies. Okay, and then when I was going to get into reading Alice Hoffman and actually read Practical Magic, I was not expecting how different the book was going to be. So, Practical Magic is actually a series. Okay, which is, I didn't know. And so far, I read Practical Magic and I read The Rules of Magic. And The Rules of Magic is about Jet and Francis in like the 60s in New York City, which is such a vibe. And it's so good. So far, that's my favorite. Practical Magic, the book, is also good. I didn't like it as much. I'm really excited about this because this is about Maria Owens and kind of where it all starts. So I'm really excited. I also just love all the covers for the Alice Hoffman novels because in this series, because they're always this gold, beautiful covers. And again, I need to replace my copy of Practical Magic and The Rules of Magic. And then the fourth one, The Book of Magic, is the fourth one. Where does the story of the Owens bloodline begin? With Maria Owens in the 1600s, when she's abandoned in a snowy field in rural England as a baby. Under the care of Hannah Owens, Maria learns about the nameless art. Hannah recognizes that Maria has a gift, and she teaches the girl all she knows. It is here that she learns her first important lesson. Always love someone who will love you back. When Maria is betrayed by the man who once declared his love for her, she follows him to Salem, Massachusetts. Here she invokes a curse that will haunt her family. It is here that she learns the rules of magic and the lessons she will carry with her for the rest of her life. Love is the only thing that matters. So I'm very excited about this. This is definitely, I think I'm going to keep this for kind of September. Because I like to kind of keep things like this around spooky season. Like, I'm not going to read all of these in August, obviously. But, like, a few of these are definitely like, okay, I will read this in the fall, autumn time. Okay, this is the only, like, well, I guess, I don't know. This is the only one that's written, like, not as fiction. This is The Haunting of Vancouver Island. Supernatural Encounters with the Other Side. So, Vancouver Island is the island in which I live. And it's very spooky here, and a lot of people talk about how there's so many spirits here. So this is just kind of a local book by a local author about like all the kind of spooky stuff that goes on here and people's accounts of it. And it's just kind of like a fun thing that I have like next to my bed when I kind of want a spooky little ghost story, like something short. Next I have this really beautiful copy of The Picture of Dorian Gray. I've never read this book and I'm so upset, but it has a little ribbon bookmark, which is so cute. I'm trying to find like a blurb. There's not really anything on here, but it is just a beautiful, beautiful book. Battery died. The only poetry book in this stack of a haul, which is unfortunate, but it's the complete poems of Sappho, because who would I be if I didn't have this? Which I'm really, really excited. I am just... You know what, let's like pick one and read one now. Moon and Women. The moon appeared in her fullness when women took their place around the altar. Hair yellower than torch flame. My mother used to say in her youth it was a great ornament to wear a purple ribbon looped in her hair, but a girl with hair yellower than torch flame need wear just a wreath of blooming flowers, or lately maybe a colorful headband from Sardis or some Ionian city. She likes blondes. Sappho likes blondes, just letting you know. We're almost done, guys. There's 2 more books. Tender is the Flesh. I needed something as unsettling as me. There's just something about reading a book that if someone knows what it's about and you're just out in public, they're like, okay. Working at the local processing plant, Marcos is in the business of slaughtering humans, though no one calls them that anymore. His wife has left him, his father is sinking into dementia, and Marcos tries not to think too hard about how he makes a living. After all, it happened so quickly. First, it was reported that an infectious virus had made all animal meat poisonous to humans. Then, governments initiated the transition. Now, eating human meat, special meat, is legal. Marcos tries to stick to numbers, consignments, processing. Then one day he's given a gift, a live specimen of the finest quality. Though he's aware that any form of personal contact is forbidden on pain of death, little by little he starts to treat her like a human being, and soon he becomes tortured by what has been lost and what might still be saved. Love and cannibalism. My 2 favorite things to read about. No, actually, I recently watched Bones and All, which I'd been avoiding watching for a bit because I was a little nervous about watching something about cannibalism, especially because it was so graphic. Wow. That movie was so good. And obviously, I'm an Ethel Cain stan, okay? And so obviously, as a preacher's daughter, amen. The end song about being cannibalized, I was just like, ugh. And in an interview, they were talking about how, like, in her mind, when she was younger, before she understood what sex was, like, for you to love somebody so much that the closest you could get is like to consume them, right? And so that's just like what she thought, and that's what she wrote about. And so like, and then Bones and All, cannibalism was like hereditary addiction in families, and I was just like, so many ways you could like play with it as a literary device, which I love. So I'm actually really excited to read this. My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. I have such a complicated relationship with this book. As always, with any book ever, I'm just going to say this one time, always make sure you're checking trigger warnings on things. This one I will say. This goes back to, remember when I had Lolita in my hands? Okay, reading Lolita after reading this, different experience. Is exploring the psychological dynamics of the relationship between a precocious yet naive teenage girl and her magnetic and manipulative teacher, a brilliant, all-consuming read that marks the explosive debut of an extraordinary new writer. 2000. Bright, ambitious, and yearning for adulthood, 15-year-old Vanessa Y. becomes entangled in an affair with Jacob Strain, her magnetic and guileful 42-year-old English teacher. 2017. Amid the rising wave of allegations against powerful men, a reckoning is coming due. Strain has been accused of sexual abuse by a former student who reaches out to Vanessa, and now Vanessa suddenly finds herself facing an impossible choice. Remain silent, firm in the belief that her teenage self willingly engaged in this relationship, or redefine herself and the events of her past. But how can Vanessa reject her first love, the man who fundamentally transformed her and has been a persistent presence in her life? Is it possible that the man she loved as a teenager, and who professed to worship only her, may be far different from what she has always believed? Alternating between Vanessa's present and her past, My Dark Vanessa juxtaposes memory and trauma with the breathless excitement of a teenage girl discovering the power her own body can wield. Thought-provoking and impossible to put down, this is a masterful portrayal of troubled adolescence and its repercussions that raises vital questions about agency, consent, complicity, and victimhood. Yeah. That's all. That's not too many books, right? I'm going to be talking about these books more in detail later as I read them and go through them. So if you'd like to see me talk about these books or you would like to hear my thoughts on them, be sure to subscribe to my channel. So until next time, goodbye!